the latest season, part one of the latest season of the hit Netflix series Cobra Kai, which is returned, but it's only returned with 5 episodes. The first part of what's going to be a 3-part conclusion. We briefly discussed this a few weeks ago when they made the announcement, that ultimately the final season of Cobra Kai, which is season 6, is going to be split into 3 parts. Part 1 just launched in July. Part 2 won't come until November 25th, like right around Thanksgiving. And then part 3 is going to come at some point in 2025. A date is not yet to be determined. In addition to that, Sony is also developing an original Karate Kid movie that's going to come out at some point in 2025. And that is not necessarily going to tie into what they've established within this particular series. But what I'll just say is that, first and foremost, Cobra Kai, it's one of the very, very few legacy sequels that I actually like or even give a fuck about. It's a part of a rare class. I'll put it next to Top Gun Maverick or Blade Runner 2049 or Mad Max Fury Road, Creed, like that. That's kind of it. Everything else that comes out in terms of what's a legacy sequel, I'm not really here for it. But Cobra Kai is also another exception. And it's even more special because it is a TV show and they've had to tell so much more story than what a 2-hour movie ever could do. And the first 5 seasons, I just had such a blast. Bash blast. I don't know what that is. I had such a blast watching those a couple of years ago. I decided to finally binge them and I finally got around to it. And in particular, season 5 was explosive. I love season 5 a lot. They brought Terry Silver back. They often bring a lot of the villains back from the original trilogy, the antagonists to Daniel LaRusso. He was the big bad of season 5. They expanded the roster of characters tremendously, and also the levels of violence were upped significantly compared to the prior seasons. Like it was a real knockout season of a show. And so to basically raise the stakes and to overcome what they did in season 5 was always going to be a tall task. But following the demise of Cobra Kai and Terry Silver, basically the students that are both now at Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang, run by Johnny Lawrence, basically the best character of the show, they're preparing for a new world tournament called the Sekai Taikai. It's a fictional world karate tournament that's going to take place in Barcelona. And there's supposed to be peace in the valley. There's no more big villains. Everything is all good. Everything's been solved and settled. They got rid of John Kreese, who was the original big bad. But what they don't know is that he's lurking in the background. And ultimately, he's coming back to the forefront to sort of, I guess, conclude the series and be the big bad once again. And he's such a ridiculous villain. They started to, I think, give him a bit of an arc, which I thought might have led to a road of redemption for him. But now in season 6, he's kind of back to being another mustache twirling villain, which is not the greatest. It's not the greatest method of development, but they sort of ran out of, I guess, who could really be a formidable villain, especially towards Daniel and Johnny, as they're sort of, trying to come together for this big tournament that's going to happen. But really the heart of this whole series has been that conflict that exists between Johnny and Danny LaRusso. It's always been a really, really fun dynamic between those two. It's really funny to see the back and forth, the push and pull. But it's also one of those things that can really only go for so long. And at the beginning of this season 6, this part 1, we see them on the same page, but the writers have to kind of go back to the repetitious formula of finding a way to disassemble them again, to get them on opposite sides of the fence, to get them on different playing fields once again. And it becomes contrived and it becomes repetitive to see that happen like over and over. It's like, okay, we know that you guys are fundamentally different from each other in almost every way possible. You live different lifestyles. And again, following Johnny and taking the story on the other side of the coin and not following Danny was a brilliant experiment. But now that they've sort of converged and they're working together, a part of me wants them to just kind of be in harmony, at least for a while. But they break them up once again by the end of this part. And, they established that same pace that we're accustomed to if you watch Cobra Kai, which can be a little frustrating and a little bit forced, but it is a formula that's mostly worked for them. Outside of those characters, I do just want to shout out Peyton List, who was also a real standout character in these first 5 episodes. She's incredible as her character Tori. She's always been great in the show, but she had some tragedy strike in these first few episodes, did a really, really great job. And then there's also like a sub-story that they introduced about Mr. Miyagi, basically adding some shades of gray to his character. Obviously, the real life actor, Pat Morita, has passed away, but they always pay tribute to his character, but they try to add some complexity to him and show like, oh, he probably wasn't always the greatest guy. And so now LaRusso
Mm.
has to sort of contend with that and deal with that and figure out a way to like reckon with that idea because he just looks up to him so much in every way. But now they're giving him some backstory, Mr. Miyagi, some backstory, some history, to make him a little bit more human and more flawed. But it's also kind of like a backdoor pilot for a possible prequel series, which I'm not necessarily a fan of because let's not just keep doing the same thing, guys. Like, let's go different places. But, ultimately, I still really enjoy part one. It gets me excited for part two. I'm just bummed out that they separated it by 3 months. We're accustomed to Netflix doing these split seasons now. They do it all the time. But typically, there will be about a month layover in between parts one and part two. But we're waiting 3 months until November. So they're really stretching it out. Q4, I guess I got to get that ready. And then 2025 is going to be the last 5 episodes, which is just like, okay, we're really dragging this. I hate that's a reality, but at the end of the day, I've been so invested in the show and I'm on board for it. And I mostly enjoy what they deliver with part one and can't wait for part two when it arrives.
It's so crazy that that's like the new norm now is a lot of our finales and endings and things like that are part ones, part twos, and they can span 3 months to year to another. Like, it's how do we keep getting here? Like, I wonder, it's part of me wants to ask what changed, because of course there's so many factors to that, right? To what's changed, but also it's like, I don't know. Do we not care to keep it normal again? Like,
Nope, they don't care.
nobody
It's all
wanna.
shareholder driven. It's all about the share for Netflix in particular. Subscriber retention. That's all that it's about. They realize, like, oh yeah, here's the great way to not make people churn and unsubscribe. Oh shit, you want to watch that show? Well, you have to subscribe for the next 3 months, otherwise you're not going to get it. It's a really cruel thing to do, but they realize the power that they have. They realize that that's like a really effective strategy. It works. In particular, Stranger Things really kind of perfected it.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
A couple of years ago, they split it up, month in between. You're not going nowhere. We're getting that money both months. Believe that. That's what it's all about here. On the movie side of things, that's definitely a bigger gamble, and we've seen that not work a lot of times. It's been pretty tragic for a lot of franchises that have tried that route.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of times when people bring up I'm canceling my Netflix, it's usually because like they don't care for the movies that are on there. Like they're like, there's not much for me to watch on here. It's never about the TV shows. It's usually always about the movies that are on there. So I think that's funny. But yeah, man, I really need to watch Cobra Kai because I know I'll love it. I just know me as a person. I need to watch that show. I'm gonna get to it very soon.